happen. On the other front of quarterback news today, Will Howard, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but was just absolutely, for no reason whatsoever, just smoked by Chris Sims, who, I mean, there are a lot of people out there who Chris Sims is gospel. His quarterback rankings are gospel. His analysis on the quarterback, gospel. And I mean, Chris Sims is good. I respect what he does. I do think he's very good at his profession. I do think he's very good at breaking down film and analyzing quarterbacks. I think he's great at all that stuff. This is what he had to say about Will Howard. Quote, "How many times did I have people on my Instagram or Twitter looking at it going, why isn't Will Howard being talked about as a first rounder or second round quarterback? I don't know, because his arm is below average, because he's not incredibly accurate. He's not the greatest athlete in the world." Chris Sims, man, harsh words on Will Howard. We talked about this yesterday, and I agreed with it. I think you agreed with it to, his analysis is good. His analysis is pretty spot on, and that's why Will Howard went in the 6th round. He doesn't really have the it that an NFL team is looking for. This quarterback class didn't have any quarterbacks outside of Cam Ward that has the it per se that you want in your quarterback, but I still think he can develop it. I still think Will Howard could be that guy. What's your percentage, 1 out of 100 here, that Will Howard ever becomes the Steelers' starting quarterback? Not franchise quarterback, starting quarterback.
I would put that just under 50%. I would call that somewhere around, let's say 40% on that, because I think it is almost likely that at some point he gets a shot to be the starting quarterback. But I wouldn't hedge my bets on it. I wouldn't put everything on the fact that he will be the starting quarterback for the Steelers at some point. I think franchise quarterback, we are far away from even having that discussion about the chances of that happening. But I think there is just some hope that he will start games for Pittsburgh, despite being a 6th round pick. I mean, hey, if Mason Rudolph can do it at some point and then get a second attempt with the organization to maybe start some games, we've seen crazier things happen. So I think it's possible, if not likely.
Okay. Now, Mason Rudolph was a 3rd round pick, but I think the Steelers viewed him as an undrafted. This guy should have never gotten the NFL 1st round grade on Mason Rudolph. My behind. Okay. They treated Mason Rudolph with the utmost disrespect throughout his tenure here in Pittsburgh. And I could see Will Howard getting that opportunity. I think it's lower than that, to be honest. I think it's maybe 20-25% chance he ever gets the starting job. And the starting job, he might start a couple of games. What I look at is Will Howard. What gets me excited about Will Howard is right now, I think Will Howard could be a spot start guy where he comes in, he plays 4 games, he wins 3 of them. And you're going, heck yeah, that's what you need. That's the guy that you're looking for. But if you're asking him to play 17, he's not going to win 7. That's what that's how I view Will Howard. And I think that works in the Steelers' favor, because you need to build everything else. When the Steelers draft a quarterback next year, their quarterback situation already has the long-term backup behind him that they can trust. They already have Mason Rudolph for another season. They're ready. They're ready to have the pieces around this guy, the support system for whoever it is. It stinks that Will Howard Will Howard has all of the other things. Will Howard has incredible leadership. Will Howard has the football IQ that you're looking for in a starting quarterback. Will Howard has the intangibles up top that make you excited about Will Howard and what he can do. But he's going to have to be able to put that on the field. And to this point, I don't think he has put that on the field throughout his entire career. At moments, he's looked like a dog, but at times he's looked very mediocre. And I think that you have to see more of that. I will also say this, though, the only difference, and this is crazy because I truly do feel this way. The only difference between Will Howard and Shedeur Sanders is the fact that Shedeur Sanders has the anticipation already. Will Howard, I think, needs to develop the anticipation. But if he can develop that anticipation, Will Howard and Shedeur Sanders are the same quarterback in my eyes. Will Howard's a little bit more athletic. to be honest. Like,
Whoa.
I truly, I don't, I'm not, I like Shador Sanders. I think he's
Mhm,
incredibly accurate. I think
mhm,
he's a leader. I've heard he's, you know, one of he's an incredibly sharp football player.
mhm.
But I just think skill wise, the only thing that gave him an upper hand over the rest of this quarterback class, including everybody that got drafted in front of him,
Mhm.
was his ability to anticipate what was going to happen. And that's why I think he was the most accurate quarterback. I look at a lot of those were screen passes, but he
Sure.
was incredibly accurate with the football. Will Howard, to me, you saw bits of those in the college football playoffs, but you didn't see much beforehand. And I think that comes into play. But if people are talking Shador Sanders is already the guy, Will Howard's got the ability to develop into that. I just don't think
Sure.
that's, there's a reason at the end of the day that the Steelers did not go get Shador Sanders and that they waited
Mhm.
till the 6th round on Will Howard. And I think you have to be, you know, you have to take that into account when you talk about all of these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's my one bit of hope in terms of the inaccuracy issues with Will Howard is that over his 5-year career in the NCAA, he did see an improvement in his completion percentage in all five
True.
years. Now, this past season was an anomaly, like where's my note? 73.1 completion percentage. That is likely a product of the fact that he had two first round offensive linemen in front of him, two
Yes.
second round running backs behind him, Emeka Egbuka, just open
Jeremiah
pretty much
Smith.
24/7, 7-11 style. Like he was, so the offense worked for him in his favor in a lot of ways. We're all very aware of that. But the growth is what I see as hope for more in the NFL. And like you said, if the rest of the intangibles are there, maybe that next little skill set can develop and then he becomes something. And if not, that's okay. The other point that I think might be important here is if he becomes a spot starter, like you suggest, it kind of harkens back to the era of when the Steelers were very successful. Quarterback depth is something that no one really mentions as being super important, but like the presence of someone like Charlie Batch was incredible because he was the premier spot starter for the Steelers. He would come in and win a couple games, couldn't have him play a full season, but when you have someone who can come in the eventual inevitability of an injury or something like that, if Will Howard comes in and wins a couple games a year, and also brings a great locker room presence, then you landed a stud in the 6th round, even if he's not a 10-year starter at the quarterback position.
Agreed. And I'm all about that situation. Like, if that's what happens with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I am all about that situation.